All right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick's Strength and Powers. I've got a couple interesting stories for you guys today, but the main story coming out of this weekend is the 2019 Pittsburgh Pro. So for those of you that don't know, the Pittsburgh Pro every year is like a milestone guest posing leading up to the Olympia, with most of the top Olympians showing up to do this guest posing, so you can see how they all look at this point in their off seasons compared to each other. Now, I think in past years, there's been a lot more top guys than there were this year, but I do think it was a very interesting guest posing for a number of reasons. I wasn't there, but I had a few people that I know that were there sending me pictures the entire time. There's a couple of key talking points that came out of this, and of course, most of you are probably already aware. The main talking point here was how Shawn Rhoden looked at this 2019 Pittsburgh Pro guest posing. Now, in addition to Shawn Rhoden, they had William Bonac, Rolly Winkler, Dexter Jackson, Brandon Curry, and Flex Lewis. So they had most of the top six guys here, with the exception of Phil Heath and Big Ramy, of course. And of these guys, the main comment that I was seeing when I was posting a lot of these stories or these pictures to my story on Instagram, a lot of people were replying to those stories. The main comment that I saw was that people thought that Shawn Rhoden looked the worst out of all these guys, even though he was the highest placer in this guest posing lineup, which was interesting. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here and defend Shawn a little bit, because Shawn Rhoden is a guy that this is what he does. I mean, at like 7 weeks out from the Olympia 2018, he looked very, very similar to this at a guest posing. And a lot of people were saying, including myself, kind of writing him off for the Olympia because of how he looked so close to the show. And Shawn is a guy that in recent years has seemed to really excel at doing these rapid transformations, taking the off season off, whether that be off gear or training less, or eating less, or just taking time off to let his body recover. It seems like that's been something that Shawn has always done, at least relatively recently, to the point where, quite frankly, he just doesn't look like Mr. Olympia in the offseason. Now, of course, a lot of people are talking shit, calling him fat, saying he didn't look good here. I actually think this is something that shouldn't really be criticized, because I think what Shawn's doing is actually very, very smart, because likely the reason that he looks like this is because he's trying to let his body rest and recover and take time off of the drugs and the training and the rigorous lifestyle of a pro bodybuilder, and not doing it year round. And if you can win the Olympia and not have to do that year round, I think that's actually pretty incredible. And if you don't have to do that year round, why should you? I mean, if this is what Shawn has been doing, taking these long off seasons, getting what people would call fat in the off season, he still won the Olympia last year, and he basically did the same thing in the offseason last year, and he was sick. So do I think this is an indicator of how Shawn is going to do at the 2019 Olympia? I don't think so. I think Shawn Rhoden has always done this in the offseason. He has rapid transformations, and he really has a history of pulling it together at the last minute. We saw it at the 2018 Olympia. He did the exact same thing. And at this point, we're so far out from the Olympia still, he has plenty of time to pull it together and get back at it. But certainly, I mean, yeah, I see the rationale of people saying, oh, Shawn might not win the Olympia in 2020 because of all these top Olympians in this lineup. If you were judging this guest posing as the Olympia, I don't think anybody would have Shawn winning out of the guest posing lineup. But again, it's just a guest posing. All these guys are at various different points in their offseason. Again, you know, Rolly Winkler and William Bonac have competed extremely recently relative to Shawn Rhoden or Dexter Jackson. So, of course, they're going to look a little bit sharper and a little bit better because they're not as deep into their offseason as Shawn, who hasn't competed since September of last year. Now, I also wanted to give a shout-out to David Bay here, who works for Muscle and Fitness. He was one of the first people to send me some pictures and videos from the Pittsburgh Pro. So shout-out to him. So a lot of the stuff you're looking at here was sent to me by David, who was in the audience at the Pittsburgh Pro. I was not. But overall, my opinion on the rest of the lineup, I think as far as Brandon, Bonac, and Rolly are concerned, I think it was business as usual for them as far as guest posing shape. That's pretty much how they usually look at guest posing from what we've seen in the past. But Shawn Rhoden, he doesn't really do that many guest posings, I guess. We don't really see him that frequently in the offseason, especially now that he's Mr. Olympia. He really doesn't have to. Now, another thing that I noticed here about Shawn Rhoden's guest posing in particular is the fact that if Shawn appears to be wearing the Classic Physique posing trunks, the new IFBB Classic Physique posing trunks for the Classic Physique division, I thought that was kind of an interesting choice to pose in the Classic Physique trunks, but just one thing that really stood out to me. So I want to know your guys' opinion in the comment section below. Do you think Shawn should have done this guest posing, How do you think Shawn Rhoden looked here? Do you think he looked good for an offseason Shawn Rhoden? Do you think he looked bad? And why do you think he looked this way? Do you think he's a guy that just gains a lot of weight in the offseason? Do you think he takes a lot of time off from drugs or training to spend time with family, which is not a bad thing at all? But maybe if he's going to do that and take time off, maybe he should turn down a guest posing like this and not necessarily, really need to show himself looking like this. I mean, he doesn't need to. All people really need to see is how he's looking on the day of the Olympia. And he probably didn't even get paid for this guest posing because it was Jim Mannion's show in Pittsburgh. So really, I don't really know what the incentive was to show up. All right, so the next story that I have for you guys today is pretty big news for the female divisions in the NPC and the IFBB. So this news also came out of the Pittsburgh Pro weekend. It was announced there by Jim Mannion. So they said starting in 2020, we will be bringing the wellness division to the NPC, NPC Worldwide, and the IFBB Pro League. See video, NPC IFBB Pro League President Jim Mannion. NPC Women's Rep Sandy Williamson, Vice President Tyler Mannion, and NPC News Online President Frank Seppi. So for those of you that don't know what this division is, I would essentially sum it up as the booty division. This division is basically really focused on the lower body, specifically the backside. And this is a division that's become really popular in South America. And the best way that I could really describe it is kind of like a figure girl's physique with a much bigger lower body and a much bigger booty. So it's actually kind of funny because just a month ago, or maybe it was 2 months ago now that I was at the Indy Pro, I was just talking to Hector Mendoza, the photographer for MD, and he was telling me about this division because I hadn't heard of it because I wasn't too familiar with the South American bodybuilding scene or women's divisions down there. And he was telling me about this division when he goes to these shows. People go crazy for this wellness division in these other countries because it's like a whole nother level of lower body development for the female divisions. So I guess it's a kind of cool addition in the sense that we get to see bigger butts now in the NPC and IFBB. I guess that's something that people wouldn't really object to, myself included. But one more division in the female category, I don't know. I think maybe they should lose one of the divisions if they're going to add yet another division to bikini, figure, physique, and let's not forget about fitness and the possibility of female bodybuilding comeback. I mean, we could have like 6 women's divisions. So I think if they're going to bring in wellness, one of the other divisions has to go. And again, this is apparently not happening until 2020. So it appears they've got plenty of time to actually figure out what they're going to be doing here, how they're going to introduce this division, what the rules are going to be, what the criteria is going to be that separates this division from figure or bikini, because it's really kind of a hybrid of the two. It kind of focuses more on the curves of bikini, but they still want the girls to have kind of the upper body of a figure girl, is kind of what I understand it to be. Now, the final story that I have for you guys today is something all kinds of people have been tagging me in lately, and this is the Victor Martinez situation. Victor Martinez versus men's physique, or at least that's the way that Generation Iron is making it out to seem. They put up this post on Instagram here of Victor Martinez, and they've got the headline here, Victor Martinez, anybody can do physique. Bodybuilding is too hard. My brother who did 13 years in jail came out. He looks good enough to do physique. Read full quotes here made by Victor Martinez now on GenerationIron.com. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? I encourage you guys not to go to GenerationIron.com and check them out because honestly, I don't like them. So why don't you guys click that subscribe button on Nick Strength and Power instead? Now, let's talk about this for a second because I think Victor actually does have a point here, not necessarily referring to pro men's physique guys because I think that's an entirely different ball game. And I don't think Victor actually ever specifies that he's talking about physique pros here. But let's be 1,000% honest here. If we're talking about the amateur level, if we're talking about the NPC, if we're talking about a guy that wants to compete in men's physique at any random little city's NPC show, any local little show, let's be honest, anybody can do it. Like legitimately, there was a guy that went to my high school and he worked out for maybe 4 or 5 months. Real skinny guy, really small guy, worked out for 4 or 5 months. Naturally, no gear, started competing in men's physique right off the bat, and he was winning local shows, like left and right. Like legitimately, I'm not exaggerating, spent like 4 or 5 months of his life working out consistently, and that's it, and started competing in men's physique, and he was winning shows. So if Victor's talking about the amateur level here, I actually fully agree with him, because not just the fact that it's easy for people to win shows right off the bat, it's easy for people to compete right off the bat because there's so many competitors in these NPC shows, and there's so many categories to compete in from the height standpoint. So you have the short guys, the medium guys, the tall guys, the really tall guys. So there's so many places for you to compete. And even at these local shows, man, even on the smallest level, there's like 10, 20 guys in each category. So almost everybody can say, well, I beat somebody. So you could have some dude take like 32nd place out of 33 guys at the Mr. Guadalajara, and now he's putting NPC Men's Physique in his bio on Instagram. So I don't think Victor's entirely wrong on this one. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you think Victor Martinez was out of line saying what he said? Do you think Shawn Rhoden was out of line doing this guest posing? And what do you think about bigger booties in the NPC and the IFBB? Thank you guys for watching this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Hit subscribe if you have not subscribed already. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.